Welcome to our channel, where we dive into the darkest corners of Reddit to uncover the most spine-chilling horror stories. From eerie encounters to unsettling mysteries, these tales will leave you questioning the shadows around you. Get ready to experience the fear, the suspense, and the unknown. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a terrifying tale. Now turn off the lights, sit back, and prepare yourself for a journey into the unknown.
The cul-de-sac slept. Streetlights cast pools of orange on empty asphalt. Houses stood dark, windows like blank eyes. It was the kind of night you forgot existed, swallowed by routine, peaceful, predictable. Except for the chirping crickets, silence hung heavy. Even the breeze seemed to hold its breath, leaves unmoving on manicured lawns. The air, thick with the scent of freshly cut grass, carried a faint hint of chlorine from backyard pools. On a quiet street, nestled between identical houses, sat a patio. Strung with twinkling lights, it was an island of warmth in the sea of darkness. A haven from the ordinary, a place to unwind. The man of the house sat there, a sanctuary from the day. A cold drink in his hand, he watched the day's last light fade. He took a slow sip, savoring the quiet. For a moment, everything felt right, normal. Then he saw it. A flicker of movement in the periphery. At the edge of the light, where shadows stretched long and thin, a figure stood. It wasn't much at first, just a silhouette against the deepening twilight. The man paused, mid-sip. His eyes narrowed, trying to make sense of the shape. It was tall and slender, almost too still, unnatural. A chill went down his spine, a prickle of unease. He blinked, hoping to clear his vision. Maybe it was just a trick of the light, a figment of his imagination. But when he looked again, it was still there, watching. The figure remained motionless, shrouded in darkness. It didn't move, didn't speak. It just stood there, a silent, watchful presence, and the man felt a knot of fear tighten in his chest. He wanted to call out, to demand who was there, what they wanted, but his voice caught in his throat. Fear, cold and paralyzing, gripped him. He tried to rationalize. A neighbor's kid, maybe, playing a prank? But the thought rang hollow. There was something about the figure that felt wrong, menacing. He sat frozen, his gaze locked on the shadowy figure. Every muscle in his body screamed at him to run, to hide, but he couldn't move. He was trapped, not by physical restraints, but by fear itself. Time seemed to stretch, each tick of the clock an eternity. The figure remained, a silent sentinel, and the man felt a cold sweat prickle on his skin. The warm summer night had turned into a nightmare. The figure shifted slightly, a subtle movement that sent shivers down the man's spine. It was then he noticed it, a glint of light reflecting off something held in the figure's hand, something metallic. He couldn't breathe. His mind raced, conjuring images from late-night thrillers. His pulse pounded in his ears, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of the night. Then, just as suddenly as it had shifted, the figure turned. It began to move, gliding silently back into the darkness. The man watched, his breath caught in his chest. As the figure melted into the shadows, it was gone. Vanished as quickly and silently as it had appeared. The only evidence of its presence, the lingering chill in the air and the man's pounding heart. He remained frozen for a moment, heart hammering against his ribs. The silence of the night, once peaceful, was now deafening. Every rustle of leaves, every chirp of a cricket sent a jolt of fear through him. Slowly, he rose from his chair, his legs shaky beneath him. He scanned the yard, his eyes searching the shadows, but the figure was gone. There was nothing but the rustling leaves and the echo of his own fear. He stepped back into his house, locking the patio door behind him, a barrier against the unknown. But even within the supposed safety of his home, he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. He was left with a chilling question. Who or what had been watching him from the darkness? And as he lay awake that night, every creak of the house, every sigh of the wind, whispered a silent, unsettling answer. He was being watched.
The air was thick with humidity, the silence of the evening punctuated by the rhythmic chirping of crickets. The pavement, still radiating the day's heat, stretched out before me like a grey river. I was lost in thought, my mind awash with the usual anxieties. Work, deadlines, unpaid bills, the leaky faucet I'd been ignoring for weeks. The streetlights cast long, dancing shadows as I walked, their orange glow barely penetrating the oppressive darkness. The houses were mostly dark, their occupants hidden behind drawn curtains, their lives a mystery. I inhaled deeply, the scent of freshly cut grass and damp earth filling my lungs. Little did I know that this comforting familiarity was about to be shattered. As I rounded a bend, a flash of movement caught my eye. It was a woman, her silhouette barely discernible in the darkness, standing by the side of the road. She was staring intently at something in her hands, her body language radiating a strange intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. For a moment, our eyes met. Her gaze was intense, unnerving. I quickened my pace, stealing one last glance over my shoulder as I walked away. The woman was gone, swallowed by the darkness. The encounter left me feeling unsettled, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something wasn't right, that the woman's intense demeanor was a harbinger of something sinister. Yet the image of her solitary figure, illuminated by the pale moonlight, continued to haunt me. The silence of the night, once comforting, now seemed oppressive, filled with unseen dangers lurking just beyond the reach of the streetlights. As I turned onto a side street, I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see the woman following me. The street was empty, the houses dark and silent. The following day, the unsettling encounter continued to prey on my mind. The ordinary routines of life work, errands, idle chatter with colleagues seemed trivial and insignificant in light of the strange encounter. Driven by a mixture of curiosity and a growing sense of dread, I decided to return to the spot where I had seen the woman. As I approached the familiar bend in the road, my heart began to race, my palms sweating. Just as I was about to turn back, I noticed something lying on the ground near the spot where the woman had been standing. My heart pounded in my chest as I cautiously approached the package. It lay there, innocuous yet strangely menacing, like a forgotten relic of some clandestine exchange. I hesitated for a moment, my hand hovering over the package. What if it was dangerous? What if it was a trap? Curiosity got the better of me. I cautiously bent down and picked it up, surprised by its weight. It was heavier than I expected and felt cold and slightly damp in my hands. There was no writing on it, no indication of its contents or its intended recipient. With trembling hands, I began to untie the twine. The knot was surprisingly intricate, taking me several attempts to unpick. Finally, the knot came loose, and the paper unfurled, revealing its contents. My breath caught in my throat as I stared down at the contents of the package. It wasn't drugs or weapons that lay nestled in the brown paper, but a collection of old photographs. They were faded and yellowed with age, the edges frayed and torn. I carefully lifted one of the photographs, my fingers trembling slightly. It was a portrait of a young woman, her eyes bright and full of life. She wore a simple cotton dress and her hair was styled in the fashion of a bygone era. She looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't quite place her. I continued to sift through the photographs, each one a snapshot of a life lived long ago. Then I came across a photograph that made my blood run cold. It was a picture of the woman standing alone, her back to the camera, in front of a house. It was the same house that I had seen her standing in front of just a few days earlier. The woman in the photographs wasn't just some random stranger. She was the ghost of a woman who had once lived in that house, a woman who had been dead for decades. I stood there for a long time, the weight of the photographs heavy in my hands, my mind struggling to grasp the implications of what I had stumbled upon. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the street, and a chill wind whispered through the trees. I knew I couldn't stay there. I gathered up the photographs and hurried home, my mind awhirl with questions. Who was this woman? What was her story? And why had she appeared to me? I still have the photographs. I keep them tucked away in a drawer, a tangible reminder of that strange and unsettling encounter. I'll never forget the woman with the haunting eyes and the secrets she left behind.